So we are now delving deep into it, and we want to introduce Charles Akol. Charles is the Environment Affairs Officer, Green and Blue Economy and Sector Technology, Climate Change and Natural Resources Management Division at ECA, Economic Commission for Africa. So Charles, we are very happy to have you here, and thank you for joining us. And the stage is yours. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Tuku. First, let me thank Africa 21 for inviting ECA to this workshop. We now have a very strong and long-standing collaboration with Africa 21. And let me also...
Charles.
Yes,
Charles,
are you hearing me? Are you able to hear me? Hello. Are you able to hear me?
Charles, now you can speak. We want to test your sound again. It was a bit muffled, sorry.
Are you able to hear me now? Is it clearer now?
Still checking on that. You can continue telling us about how your morning is so that we can continue testing it.
How is it here?
Okay. You're still having a small problem. Can do another mic check. Hello, Charles. You're there?
I'm here. Are you able to hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Is that okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, let's proceed. In the event we have another challenge, we will request you to stop a bit.
Okay, yeah. So I was thinking that we would like to thank Africa 21 for inviting ECA to this workshop. And we also want to thank them for the strong and long-standing collaboration that we have with the Africa 21. It's a great pleasure for me in particular to have this opportunity to interact with journalists and the media fraternity at large. It's not very common that we have this opportunity because we tend to speak to ourselves as practitioners and experts. So today, talking to journalists gives me an opportunity to test and see whether there are areas that we can strengthen communication and work with the journalists. I'll be making a short presentation that will basically trigger discussion. I'm happy that in the room and online, there is a rich number of experts in the area of circular economy. I'm also happy that the journalists themselves have done some work on circular economy and will therefore be a big resource and will enrich the presentation that I'm going to be making. The opening speakers have really made my life much easier because they have dealt with all the issues that I was supposed to deal with here. But what I would like to do in this presentation is basically outline or highlight some elements related to linear economies and in the context of the global and regional aspirations for inclusive and sustainable development in Africa and globally. And maybe go through some of the things that have already been mentioned by the opening speakers on circular economy and why it matters for the world as well as Africa, and highlight some global and regional challenges to transition into circularity if you want circular economy, and what we see as emerging priorities to drive circular economy in Africa. And I would also like to share with you some selected interventions and actions that we and our partners are taking towards transitioning to circular economy. As it was mentioned during the opening, the current systems of economy are based on linear principles. are based on linear principles of extracting natural resources, using them up and creating huge volumes of waste. And the use of resources has actually tripled since 1970 and could double again by 2060 if we go with the business as usual scenario. But the resources, I must say, are getting overused. According to the Circularity Gap report of 2023, globally, only 7.2% of used materials are recycled back into economy after use. This leaves an enormous circularity gap, which is not sustainable in the long run. In 2019, 7.3 kilograms of e-waste per capita was generated globally, yet only a small proportion of this is put under sound management. This undermines the health of millions of people in addition to other environmental damage. Now, we also must know that about 67% of global greenhouse gas emissions are related to material management. And that is how we extract the materials, how we deploy them in production and consumption, and how we eventually dispose of this material. And this all generates about 67% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And there are estimates already that close to 13 million tons of plastic leak into oceans, where it harms biodiversity, economies, and potentially human health. Now, for us in Africa, our population is forecast to double to about 250 from the 2017 population. This is bound to increase pressure on the continent's already stretched resources. The implication is that we need to ensure efficient and sustainable use of our resources to grow our economies, to create jobs, and lift over 460 million people out of poverty. And from the easier perspective, African countries are already losing an average of 15% of their GDP due to climate change. And these losses rise to about 15% in some countries. And this demonstrates the critical importance of addressing emissions associated with the current linear models of production and consumption. Now, let me now deal with what circular economy and why it matters. I think in the opening session, we already had that the definitions of circular economy, and you are all familiar with the definitions of circular economy. But I just wanted to say that circular economy is based on 3 principles, because sometimes we tend to misunderstand what circular economy is and equate it to waste management. And so circular economy basically has 3 principles. One of them is designing waste out and pollution, designing out waste and pollution by focusing on product design, creating more efficient and sustainable products from the start to reduce energy, water, and other resources consumed. It also means maintaining the value of materials and products and keeping them in use for as long as possible. And that's where you always find your reuse, recycle, upcycle principle that you talk about. And then the third principle is really regenerating natural systems. And this is a principle that is actually normally not talked about, because it is moving from exploitative to regenerative practices, for instance, through the application of regenerative farming. This is very important. We therefore see circular economy as an opportunity to reduce the consumption of raw materials. And again, according to the 2023 Global Circularity Gap, we would only need 70% of the material that we are currently using if we adopted circular economy. And we have now a lot of literature showing that circular economy is actually very critical for addressing the 3 triple planetary crises. That is of climate change, biodiversity loss, as well as pollution, including management of plastics. Now, and we already know also from literature available that circularity is very critical in reaching our 2050 net zero commitment. And I wanted to mention it again, that the literature shows that changing the way products are made and used can contribute to addressing 45% of the greenhouse gas emissions thus mitigating the unfolding climate crisis. And that's why moving towards circular economy matters for Africa and the rest of the world. But it's not all about addressing environmental crises that we have just mentioned about up there. It's also about businesses that the circular economy model can bring on board. And globally, it is estimated that circular economy models present a 4.5 trillion economic opportunity. And in Africa, our colleagues from the African Development Bank are suggesting that about the market opportunity of circular economy is about $8 billion. So this is extremely important. But there are challenges to transitioning to circular economy that we must be able to address. And a number of them are here, and I just wanted to highlight 6 of them. The first one is that circular economy, although it's not really a very new concept, because it has been happening in Africa, particularly in one way or another, but there is limited awareness and knowledge of circular economy. And there's poor communication of the benefits of circular economy. And that's why I'm extremely excited to be able to talk to journalists today, because I think this is going to, at the end of this meeting, maybe we shall have an action agenda for ensuring that we can better communicate circular economy, and we can work together to identify areas where we need to be able to deal with circular economy communication better. And because we are talking about a new development model, the problem that we are dealing also with is poor institutional arrangements and inadequate policy frameworks. This creates a lack of holistic and economy-wide approaches. And it means that the playing ground is not very well known, and the stage is not set for investors to be able to play their part. And because of that, there's also a lack of incentives to invest in circular economy. The other very serious challenge is limited capacity and technology, particularly to recycle. I know that every time I hear some of the media houses, particularly in Uganda, they talk about recycle, reuse, reduce, and the challenge that I have with that is sometimes that we saw issues a message, and it's meant for everybody. And I hope the community can identify that they do not have the capacity to recycle, and it is meant for those people with capacity in technology. And there's also lack of infrastructure, especially if you're trying to talk about recycling. You need infrastructure that will be able to make sure that you sort this waste, for example, and you're able to transport this waste, and you are able to make sure that you can store the waste. That is a big problem when it comes to circular economy. And I'm happy that our colleagues from the African Development Bank are here, and they will address a very serious challenge to circular economy, which is inadequate financing for transition to circular economy. I therefore will leave the African Development Bank to later on take us through the extent of this challenge and what the bank is doing with the rest of the partners to address this particular challenge. And then we have the other major challenge, which is commercialization of circular economy products and services. I think this is also based on a misconception of what circular economy products are, and they are sometimes seen as inferior goods, and there is also competition from the linear products that are produced from the linear production system, and which makes them a little bit more expensive than you would actually expect. Now, from where I sit and what we've been doing, there are some of what we call emerging priorities to drive circular economy. And the first one, I think that is very important, and that is related to what we are doing in this workshop. It's really creating awareness and increasing appreciation of circular economy, and therefore being able to communicate better circular economy, what it is, the good practices, the benefits, where it is happening, and who are the champions, and what do you derive from it from the social and economic angle, other than the sometimes misconception that it is basically driving the environmental perspective. And that communication is also very important in terms of dealing with behavior and attitude change. And of course, that becomes a very important priority for transitioning to circular economy. The other one is really dealing with institutional, regulatory, and incentive framework. I think the biggest problem there is make sure that circular economy is institutionalized in legislation to support the transition. We need the capacity development for stakeholders in various institutions, the private sector, the media, and we need clear roadmaps and action plans for circular economy in this area to provide a vision and a long-term strategy for the transition. We need policy integration, making sure that circular economy becomes an integral part of other sectoral initiatives, including trade policies, the nationally determined contributions, forest interventions, and so on. And therefore, we need also, under this institutional, regulatory, and incentive framework, to provide incentives for the private sector businesses to invest and increase demand on circular products and services, and maybe be able to tax a little bit more the linear production models, and ensure that we have platforms where we can connect circular economy products and services to the market. The other very important emerging area of priority in trying to transition to circular economy is strengthening the collaboration, particularly among all the stakeholders, and it has to be system-wide. I was very happy to hear the work that is being done by the legal fraternity in terms of developing the laws, for example, the East African community. But that's one angle. We need to make sure that we have a system-wide approach where we not only have the policies, but we are accompanied with the finance, we have to accompany with the practice, and we need to make sure that the value chain actors are all together in it. And that's one way where we can be assured, that the laws that we pass are not actually left on the shelves. And of course, another very important priority is strengthening the market demand for circular economy products, and I already mentioned it, and then making sure that we have platforms and network on circular economy, and ensure that we have international and regional partnerships and collaboration. Now, let me just take you through a few interventions, action that we have been involved in, and that we know. I think some of the key interventions that are actually driving circular economy are resolutions that have been adopted by the General Assembly, especially Resolution 162 and the UNEA Resolution 5, Resolution 11. All of these call for concrete actions to really strengthen the actions to drive circular economy. But the most recent one, and which has been referred to one of the colleagues earlier on, is the Resolution 55/14 on ending plastic pollution, and therefore moving towards an international legally binding instrument, which was adopted in 2022. And the idea here is that we should be able to have a legally binding plastic pollution treaty by the end of 2024. And I think there are going to be discussions next week. And I hope you'll be part of those discussions to see how this is evolving. And this is very important if you want to put in place to adopt a concrete legal binding instrument on plastics. And this is just one of the sectors where circular economy has a great potential. We also have the EU Circular Economy Action Plan. The good thing about this action plan is it seeks to build partnership with Africa to maximize the benefits of green transition and circular economy. And that is the reason why, for example, the European Union has been supporting the African Union Commission to develop our continental circular economy action plan. We also have the Global Circular Economy Forum, which meets every year. The last one met in Helsinki. The one before that met in Rwanda and adopted the Kigali Declaration. I think the outcomes of this forum are actually critical in driving circular economy in the region. And then, of course, we have PACE, which is the platform for accelerating the circular economy, which actually gives us actionable knowledge to make sure that we drive circular economy. And then, of course, countries globally are adopting circular economy roadmaps. I think more than 40 countries already have circular economy roadmaps. But in Africa, we are happy to say that we have now got the guidelines on accelerating transition to circular economy. These were developed by UNEP, ECA, the African Union Commission, and African Development Bank, and they are very critical in making sure that we have the right processes towards accelerating the transition to circular economy. And I will be able to give you the link to these guidelines at an appropriate time. We also have the Continental Action Plan, which has been developed by AUC with support of the expert working group on circular economy. And then, of course, national roadmaps are now beginning to pop up in Africa. And again, we would like to note the pioneer role of Rwanda as the first country to launch the circular economy action plan. But of course, we are very happy also that at region level, we have a number of initiatives that including platforms and alliances that are helping to foster circular economy. And again, these are the colleagues that belong to these mechanisms are represented, and we'll be able to talk about them later on, including the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, the Africa Circular Economy Foundation, the Africa Circular Economy Network. But it's very important, like I said earlier on, that Africa is not beginning circular economy from a vacuum. I think there are some policies, regulations that have been in place before, only that they have been limited in scope and they have not been looking at circularity in a more holistic manner. Let me end by highlighting some of the work that ECA is involved with respect to circular economy. Our work basically is done in the context of transitioning to inclusive, job creating, and just green and blue economies in Africa. We are a member of the Africa Regional Expert Working Group on Circular Economy of the African Union, and therefore we have been in partnership with UNEP, the African Union, the African Development Bank, in developing the regional guidelines and the action plan. Our next action will be to implement a Continental Circular Economy Action Plan. The plan is going to be submitted to the Specialized Technical Committee of AUC this month, and once adopted, it will be rolled out for implementation. We are also doing a lot of work on circularity and blue economy, making sure that we integrate circularity into a blue economy, particularly looking at plastics as a major threat to marine resources. And therefore, in this case, we would like to say that we want to have sub-regional dialogues on sustainable management of plastics and mainstreaming them into blue economy in the future. We are going to be working on the aspects related to trade and circularity. We believe that the African Continental Free Trade Area presents the use of a very important opportunity to adopt green value chains, including promoting circular economy, such as through promoting alternatives to recyclable elements or packages. We also think that it is very critical in making sure that we move waste from country to country as a byproduct or as a resource for recycling. I think this is because not all countries can have the capacity to recycle whatever waste that comes out. And therefore, we must take advantage of the cooperative advantage. We are working on critical minerals, and we would like to make sure that circular economy is becoming part of it. And we would like, therefore, to leverage investments for circular economy and promote opportunities for women and youth in low emission and green value chains of minerals for the energy transition. Another important area that we are working on is the area of digital revolution and circularity. As you are all aware, Africa is moving fast in adopting digitalization, including mobile telephony and so on and so on. So there's a great opportunity for us to make sure that we couple the national digitalization visions and roadmaps with national circular economy policies, plans, and programs. This has the potential to stem electronic waste, including through appropriate reuse, recycling, and job creating ventures. I once again would like to thank you for your kind attention. And that was meant to give you a flavor to trigger discussion and for us to be able to identify other areas where we can work together with journalists to make sure that we advance circular economy in Africa rapidly. I thank you so very much.
All right, let's appreciate Charles. Yeah, thank you so very much, Charles. And I'll request you to stay online, just listen through to our questions, because I know that our colleagues here have a number of questions. But maybe just to start it off, I just wanted to ask you one question. As a practicing journalist, I find it difficult to think through how we can do the behavior and attitude change, because even as we deal with this at an expert level, the implementation must happen at the ground with everyone else. So how is the plan to deal with the issue of behavior and attitude change on your side, maybe? Hi, Charles.
Thank you very much. Do you want me to take this, or you want me to take very much? I think there was a presentation earlier on in the during the opening, where one of the colleagues there talked about good practices.
Yeah,
I think this is one of the entry points for making sure that we can really change attitudes and behavior. I think she illustrated this very nicely with her journey from Rwanda to Uganda, and she said that you just need to cross the border and you'll find that the plastics are right on your legs or your feet or something like that. And I think that making sure that we have that documented as a good practice and making sure that we can be able to highlight those practices and make sure that the people who actually use some of these resources or who are engaged in this can actually be able to witness firsthand some of these things. I think will be very important. I know that as part of these good practices, for example, if you are trying to use compost and other sources of waste for increasing productivity, I think colleagues are most likely to shun waste that is generated from sewerage treatment, for example. But I think that it will be very good if we can demonstrate that it's quite healthy, okay, to produce with compost generated from sewerage, and it doesn't have any side effects, and that at the highest level we can actually consume it. So to me, the issue of behavior change and changing attitudes can be dealt with that way. But I think also the other thing that we can do is, if we can make it a little bit more expensive to use those products that normally have a big impact on the environment. I think they on the resource exploitation. I think that can also lead to change of attitude and change of behavior. I know that these days it's not very cheap for you to walk away with the Festa if you want a good one in Ethiopia, or if you want a Kavera in Uganda, you'll have to pay through your nose. And that, I think, drives behavior change. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I want to open this for questions now.
Thank you. I captured something when he was speaking about, he says the earth resources are being overused. Just want to find out, does he have data or sources to back this? Because often people accuse journalists of, putting out information that are not verified and other things. So if he can help with some form of backend, Thank you.
Okay. Should I respond to that?
Let's take a few and then we'll take three questions and then you can respond to the three of them. Okay with you? Charles?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so.
Okay, from your presentation, we have seen that, okay, I have realized that the private sector is the one which is playing a key role in terms of circular economy. What about the governments which are in place?
And maybe also in your presentation over the action plan or interventions, you talked about having a regional guideline over the same. But I want to ask this, do you think having that regional guidelines without political will work?
Yeah, let's take the three. Charles, so answer the three of them, then we'll come back with a few more. So when you are asking the question first, kindly remember to introduce yourself and then you go to the question. So we will come to you after he answers the three of them. Okay, good. Charles, let's go.
Yeah, I thank you very much. There's a question related to the art resources are being overused. I do not have the data offhand here, but I can tell you that the key resource that you should be able to access for data in terms of resource use are two sources. One, the resource panel has done a lot of work in terms of resource use, but also the circularity gap report has a lot of data in terms of resource use. But I'm sure that there are elements that can show you that resources are really being overused. If you walk outside areas where you are born, you will be able to see the extent to which tree cover has completely been depleted in some areas, or it has completely reduced tremendously. This is a sign that we are really overusing these resources. And I think what we are saying here is that this is going to triple. The use of resources is going to triple by 2060 if we do not change the way we are using resources. And then secondly, the private sector plays a key role about government. Yeah, I think it's very important. The private sector definitely is the one that brings up the finance, that does the innovation, and brings out the innovation for all the things that we want to include recycling, brings new technologies. But I think that the governments are playing a very important role. Right now, the government, including Rwanda, is playing a very important role in putting in place the framework to make sure that we align whatever we do with the circular economy requirements, including the roadmap that we're talking about. You talk about all the bans that have been issued. That's the role of government. But I think it doesn't stop there. I think what government is also doing is making sure that it creates incentives for the private sector actually to invest. In countries like Kenya, and I think even in Uganda, they are trying to do what they call green public procurement. It ensures that the green products, circular products that are produced by companies have got what we call a priority, if you want, first shot in terms of market, particularly from government, to be able to be bought. So I think that is the role that government is doing. And I talked about policy framework that it will be put in place and what they're doing. That is all the role of government. But there's a little bit more that needs to be done, making sure that there's actually a partnership between governments and the private sector. And my colleague from African Development Bank will deal with the issues of financing and the role of government in facilitating the work of the small and medium scale enterprises. Regional guidelines, will they work without political will? I can tell you that they won't work without political will. And so we do not stop at basically developing the guidelines. The guidelines in them have mechanisms for implementation, including making sure that we engage with the political heads at the various levels, rec level and member state level, basically to generate the understanding that they require of circular economy. But also, I talked about the circular economy action plan. This is being submitted to the Specialized Technical Committee of the AUC. And this is eventually going to be fed into the AU Heads of State and Government Summit, with a view to making sure that they actually recognize this as one of the priorities that should be driven at their country level. But I do agree with you, political will is very important. And I think that is where you journalists can play a big role in making sure that we seek accountability from all levels in terms of what is be done to drive circular economy. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We will take another round of 3 questions.
Yeah, mine is a quick one. My name is Johnson Kanamujire. I am a journalist from Rwanda. When you spoke about the lack of market demand for circular economy products, it seems as when we talk circularity, we are talking trade, we are talking business. And my question is, who gains from the business as usual way of doing things when we talk of these issues, and how does these forces come into play when you push for the transition? And maybe you could also talk to policy shifts that are needed for us to be able to bypass the barriers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Doreen. I'm from Ghana. I'm a journalist from Ghana. So when we're talking about the global and regional challenges to transition into circularity, you mentioned limited technology and capacity to recycle and the lack of or poor infrastructure. Last year, my friends or some of my colleagues and I did a story on recycling, and we spoke to a guy in Ghana who is into recycling. And one of the things he mentioned was the lack of plastics or waste to even recycle. So I'm wondering whether is it Ghana's situation that is different, or is it a challenge with other African countries? Since you mentioned these 2 challenges, and where we strike the balance to get enough of these, whether we get enough of these resources, the waste to recycle, or we actually just stop using these plastics to, cut down the amount of plastics in the system. I'm just wondering where we draw the balance. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Charles. Thank you for the insightful presentation. Muhyiddin from Nigeria. You talked about market opportunity of about $8 billion for Africa. And I'm always interested when it comes to money. So apart from the sustainability, which is very important, I know the other way we can drive this thing home is when both the government, the private sector, and even the ordinary person on the streets sees it as an opportunity to also make money. So my question, point blank, will be how in practical terms, this $8 billion economy, what are the areas, what are examples, so that one thing I've learned, just like one of the speakers said earlier, it's not just about copy and paste. If we can break it down, for example, if I'm writing a story about Nigeria and how they need to key in, because the awareness is very, very low in Nigeria. So we need to get a multi-pronged approach to make everybody, all stakeholders, key in. So the money issue, which areas in practical terms, how can they key in so that we can, like we say in local parlance, kill a stone with, we kill like 3 birds with just a stone. That was sustainability, people making money, and our environment being the better for it. Thank you.
All right, Charles, we'll come to you again. Charles, we take the 3 and then we still have another round of questions. Looks like it's a hot topic.
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions that have been put before me. I think I will rely sometimes on my colleagues who are there to assist me with some of these questions at some point in time. So who gains from the business as usual? I think my colleague from Rwanda mentioned this. You see, sometimes when we talk about circular economy, we are also talking about a just transition to circular economy. And so I think the biggest challenge that we are dealing with sometimes, and that's the problem that causes a stalling of some of the things that we adopt, including the bans of some of the things of plastics, is the fact that many private sector companies have actually sunk in a lot of money on the investments that are actually generating some of the challenges that we face with circular economy. And therefore, those need to actually recoup some of their investment. So those are the people who stand to gain with the business as usual scenario. But we also know that we would not like to move in such a manner that we disrupt the entire process. And therefore, we must have just transition mechanisms that allow, for example, assuming that you are charging, you are not charging, you are giving out polyethylene bags free of charge, and then you decided to charge them, say $1. I think the people who would stand to lose would be mainly the people who benefit from proper packaging for their things, and therefore you don't want to make sure that they lose out. And then there are also benefits that accrue to the people who are actually currently employed in if you want, the linear-based economy model. So those are the people who have who stand to lose out, but who are currently benefiting. And so sometimes that's where you find that governments find themselves in a catch-22, make sure that they balance and make sure that the transition is actually just, to allow systems to be able to be adjusted. And I do not know whether I've dealt with the question, but that is the key issue. And government itself has a lot of interest in this, because you don't want to throw out millions of people on the street without jobs. You don't want to expose people to hazard-related lack of products that they are normally used to. So those are the kind of things that you deal with. The question with Ghana having lack of plastic to recycle, this looks like good news. It means that you maybe have taken all the plastics that need to be recycled, but I'm not very sure whether that's the situation, because I know that visiting Accra, I still see a little bit of plastic that need to be recycled. But I think maybe what the challenge is making sure that the plastics are available in qualities that are recyclable, and they can be easily collected and available, and they are sorted from the other waste that is available there. Because sometimes what impedes the whole recycling process is whether you can sort, reclassify this waste, and make sure that you can eventually be able to get the right volumes. Market opportunity for about 80 billion. There's a lot of market opportunity, of course, in this. And one of the areas that we actually stand to gain a lot is the issue of e-waste. If you look at how much e-waste is actually being churned out a lot, and there's a potential for us to be able actually recycle that and put some of those computers back to use, be able to drive the economies that we are talking about. The issue of plastics is growing, and we are talking about recycling plastic, but we also talking about alternatives. Look at manufacturing of substitutes for plastics, alternatives to plastics, including the paper bags that we see emerging. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to do regenerative agriculture with a view to generating a lot of food. And we can actually do a little bit of more in agriculture, particularly in terms of making sure that we do what we call minimizing food waste. That is one of the challenges that affect farmers across Africa, and it affects many other industries that are involved in processing agro produce. And so those are some of the areas where we think there's a lot of market opportunity actually, and can drive a lot of economic growth in Africa. Thank you very much, Tuku.
Okay, thank you so very much. We still have another few questions for you, so I will request us to proceed to the next round of 3.
Thank you so much. There you go. Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Akol. My name is Nila Yasmin. I'm a journalist from Uganda. My question is about women's inclusion into the action plan. When you talk about driving the circular economy, women heavily influence consumption decisions, especially domestically. We see that they are heavily involved in waste collection. In Uganda, where I come from, most of the plastic waste collectors, you find that a vast majority of them are women. And besides that, this is like a huge segment of our population. Like their population is a bit high there. How are they being integrated? How are they being included into these action plans that you've been talking about? Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, Charles, take it away.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. I forget the actual document, but I have looked at a report done by GIZ, and I think it looked at inclusion of women in the waste management sector, particularly in central Uganda. I think there are a number of ways that this is actually being dealt with. And first of all is to make sure that we recognize that women actually have a big role, and they are playing a very big role in terms of waste management in many of the African countries. So involving them means that we have specific programs that are targeted at, because, women normally have what they call informal enterprises, and they're actually the ones who do a lot of micro enterprises. I think one of the things that seems to be emerging very, very carefully is the need to actually make sure that we provide them with the financing to be able to run their businesses, because they are the ones who are able to actually pick the rubbish, but also do recycling some of this rubbish. But the problem is that sometimes access to market becomes a problem, and all they need maybe is to be able to move their product from point 1 to point A, and that requires some bit of money. The other thing that is being done is make sure that we provide these ladies with information. Again, if I'm talking about the market, I'm talking about making sure that they know where the markets are, and they know also the dangers that are involved in terms of picking this rubbish, and how to protect themselves And they actually also are given information on access to finance. That's very, very important as far as we are concerned. So, so those are some of the ways that the women are really involved in some of the action plans that I have seen in some of the countries. But what's very important is making sure that the infrastructure is actually there. Because sometimes if we do not have the infrastructure, then we are left with the poor waste disposal. Is it not sorted? We are mixing hazardous waste with this waste that women pick, and this exposes the women and their families to a lot of diseases and that kind of thing. So education goes a long way in terms of this and making sure that we have a specific gender dimension in terms of the action planning that we do with circular economy. Thank you very much.
All right, we have another question.
Thank you. I work with Ghana News Agency. My name is Albert Opoansa. One of the challenges we face as Africa is putting together data to convince either our leaders or even the masses. How is it playing in all the efforts that you are making regarding this secularity? Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a very important point. One of the approaches that we use are two things. We at ECA, what we call a think tank, and our work on circular economy was actually driven by the work that we did on how to unleash the potential of the private sector to drive green growth and job creation. And so we do a lot of country-based case studies, make sure that we generate this information. We've done that in Lusaka, and I can give you the report on that, and you can have a look at it. But also as part of the guidelines that we have developed with UNEP, AUC, and FDB, one of the first actions that every country should actually do is to build a case for circular economy. And this means that you do a country assessment in terms of the extent, the challenges and opportunities for circular economy. As part of that, you are actually generating data related to the goods and services that can be produced from circularity, the challenges related to circular economy, including the waste that you're talking about, the degradation of natural resources, the lack of laws and those kind of things. That is the first step in every country in trying to develop their circular economy roadmap and circular economy action plan. And I think that is what should be encouraged in every country to do what we call in the guideline, building the case for circular economy, which should do an assessment of all the gaps in terms of data and including identifying areas for further research with respect to circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for such a very insightful kind of detailed discussion, as well as receiving and giving all those kind of remarks. Fine. Mine is, I'm first of all coming on way from some of the questions that have been asked here on the floor. Let me begin, number one, with the confirmation, first of all. I want to confirm with the journalist from here, from Ghana, that I think everybody is cognizant that Ghana is the leading in Africa, to be very specific, by the efforts done by their environment minister by the name Dr. Kwakwa Frie, isn't it? They are the leading. In fact, they are ahead of the likes of Mexico and the likes of Kosovo is the leading. So when you go to Ghana, their waste and plastics, in fact, to begin with, first of all, plastic. The plastic recycling in Ghana is something that is done on a daily basis. It's part of the circular economy. Yeah. The problem we have on the other side, just like she confirmed, that in Ghana, they are looking for plastics to cycle. On the other side, on the flip side of Eastern Africa, the problem is, number one, just like Charles, you confirmed, and the content is with us here today. The problem we have is sensitization, just like you confirmed, Charles. So in Ghana,
the sensitization they have, and they have actualized the plan. What we need to do right now is, now, because we have the idea, is to reduce the idea and the execution, just like Ghana did. And Ghanaians are here with us. So we don't need to travel. They're here with us. They can still give the content. Just like Charles, you confirmed again. Let me talk about the legislation. The sensitization is finding a receiving end and a backlog because of legislation. Legislation is finding itself on the unwilling political will. Sensitization to legislation, then we come again to the unwilling political will. And this is the question I'm throwing to the social grid with you here today. You are the journalist here. What are we going to do with the political will? Because the buck stops with that.
Oh, that's quite an interesting question. Charles, just hold. We want to get journalists' reactions before you come in.
Maybe what I'll do, Tuku, is I'll give my perspective and then allow the journalists to discuss a little bit more. I think the case of Ghana is a very interesting one, that they have almost recycled all the waste and the plastics. I think this points to the importance of what I talked about earlier on, that now Ghana has a comparative advantage in recycling, but its neighbors do not really have a capacity to recycle. And you might find that if you go to the neighboring countries of Ghana, you'll find plenty of plastic waste. So what is the problem? First, we need to make sure that those countries are adopting mechanisms where they will be able to maybe collect this waste. But beyond that, is we now have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And there is an opportunity for us to make sure that there is actually proper movement of plastic waste from those other countries to Ghana. And Ghana becomes the hub for recycling of some of these plastics. And then see whether we can actually also then be able to transport the recycled products from Ghana to other parts of the region. So the role of trade here is critical, and the movement of goods and services between the countries is very critical. And of course, legislation, I think that one I leave to the journals to deal with, but I think what you can do for us is to make sure that you are actually, the good thing I've seen the profiles of the journalists here, they are all at a level of award-winning journalists. And I think that many of you are also what we call investigative journalists. And I think that what comes with that is the ability to assemble concrete data based on evidence from the communities to the private sector and to everybody else, and be able to put it with the politicians in order to try to shape the political will towards transitioning to circular economy. So, but I will leave it the journalists to discuss this, but because I think it's very important that we have an interesting discussion among ourselves.
So, of course, it's true that there are many organizations, and let me tell you that they are mainly private organizations doing some wonderful stuff with plastics in Ghana. I think my first story on plastic was a gentleman who is using plastics to Nono Macintosh. He's using plastics to put up buildings. You know, that was the first story I did some years back. And you talk about the political will. So in Ghana, just like some other African countries, the political cycle is the maximum is 8 years. You have only 8 years to be in power. So a government will pick the issue, and going through legislation takes so much time. By the time you finish with the regulation or legislation, you are moving to implementation, you are out of power. The next government comes and thinks like, to hell with this. So that continuity is not there. Was it Friday or Thursday? I was with the minister and he said, look, the plastic issue is more discomforting, but the political system is not helping. these were his words. The political system is not helping. So I don't know. I can't say that we should extend their political power to more than 8 years. Or I don't have the power to say that. But shouldn't it be? I think it should be like a national agenda. You shouldn't go the line of this is being spearheaded by this political party, so and all that. And because it's the private sector that is driving this, the waste speakers, for instance, feel cheated because you need to get a certain weight before you can get a certain amount of money. And the person thinks like, it's like, and another one I did, the person wakes up like 3 o'clock or 4 a.m. To go and collect waste at the lorry station, which they have been competing for that space. And then at the end of the day, I guess like, let's say, is it $1 or $2 or so for a certain kg of plastics? It's not motivating enough to go and pick. So, and then we have a bad system of waste segregation. We don't have it. So everything is mixed, so you can't see plastics here, domestic organic waste or whatever bottles here. We don't have that. So don't think Ghana is that's yeah, but I can tell you private sector is leading something good. Okay. But we need a national character. It needs to have a national character in order to get there.
Yeah, thank you. I know I'm not saying that Ghana. Well, I know because on the flip side, what we view from the other side is that you guys are already making kind of unprecedented strategies, like all of us on the other side are not doing, because maybe you are ahead and being globally there in that number. It shows that all the other countries are yet to realize what is circular economy, because like in our country here, it's more of linear, absolutely linear, a huge percentage of linear economy. That is now, it's more of an example that when the food is done on the plate becomes the dirty plate. That is it. That is what we have. That is, in fact, the perfect example of a circular economy. The food on the plate is there, the plate is so valuable. When the food is done and the plate becomes a dirty plate. That is what we have. But I think the political will, and I think, Charles, now we have to extend this one to you, that what are we going to do that now we have the political will with us today? Because now we are not going to talk and do the thematic side without the fabrication and the basics here with us.
Yeah, and Charles, as you take that, I think also an issue that has been raised is about the decent wage, because if we are going circular economy, also we must ensure that the people who are dealing from the top to the lowermost, there's decent wage, because there's no way that we are going to have people who are collecting for $1 a day. And then when that process is done, when it goes up there, someone is making hundreds or thousands of dollars. So also look at the issue of a decent wage as well for the lowest people there.
All right, thank you very much. I think there has been a very interesting discussion on this political will thing. I think this is something that affects many of the development interventions that we do at national level, because of the periodicity of the political systems and elections that come in and the turnover of the political leaders. But I think there are certain things that we can do. We are talking about long term. And that's why I think that one of the best ways to do this is to make sure that we have legislation in place. I think normally most legislations outlive the terms of office of the political appointees, and that makes it easier actually pick up where the other government started. But the challenge normally is to make sure that the legislation is people-centered, so that the people are willing to defend the legislation that is brought up. And then the other thing that we want to do is sustaining political will and making sure that we bring the politicians to act. I think we must also try to make sure that the consumers are in the driving seat and they can be able to demand certain specific action. And we must make sure that the people who are affected by given resources are actually in the forefront. If you engage the fishmongers and all those people who are reliant on lake resources for fisheries, for their livelihood, and make sure they understood the implications of the dumping of plastics and all those kind of things in the oceans and lakes, I think you have willing partners that are likely to hold the politicians to account whenever elections come into being. So that is one. The decent wage, of course, is something that is a big challenge because especially given that we still have a lot of products that are linear based, and therefore the prices that they come with are quite low, and therefore we find people who are doing some of these, producing some of these linear products actually end up with very little money going into their pocket. And so that is why we are suggesting that one way of making sure that we drive profitability in the circular economy is making sure that we tax a little bit more the linear products so that they can become too expensive and give way to the circular products. But we also want to make sure that we have a priority given to circular products. That way, again, we create incentives and, of course, try to drive the payments that are associated with producing those products. But I think this is an issue that, again, we need to discuss a little bit more in the context of what we call green jobs. So if you want decent green jobs that our colleagues from the ILO are best placed to be able to discuss at a later moment. Thank you very much.
All right, we will have like 2 or 3 final comments. Charles.
If you may, I have to run to another meeting, so if I can deal with those, and then thank you very much.
Maybe then just take this, because if you're going, then we are going to allow you to do that. You have been very good to us because you have taken much time with us and answered, reacted to all the comments that we made and questions. So from me, I would want to know, is it possible to live in a world without plastics? So we don't manufacture them, we don't pack in them, we don't recycle them, so there's no plastic.
Okay, so I can tell you straight away that you can no longer live in a world without plastics. I think that the plastics that you are seeing as being a menace are those plastics that are basically used as carrier bags. But if you look very carefully, you might find that the seat that you are on has got some bit of plastics. I'm not very sure. Okay, so I think it's somebody's battery that has got exhausted. And there are so many areas where plastics are so important, including in the medical field, including in aviation, including in your vehicles. Because if you try to change all those, okay, at the moment, I think you'll be grounding a lot of industries. So maybe in the future, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how long it will take if we can design out some of these and get substitutes and alternatives. Yes, then we can talk about a world without plastics. But I can tell you that for the foreseeable future, including the time when your grandchildren and grandchildren will be here, plastics will have a very important role to play in as far as socioeconomic development is concerned, including in the health sector, culture, transport. The thing is that we are seeing plastics that are being disposed badly. So what we now need to do is really to up the game in terms of making the plastic more recyclable, and making sure that we have the technologies to be able to deal with them. Because I think the plastics are going to be with us for a long time. Thank you very much.
So, okay, thank you so very much. I'll give you only 1 more minute to wrap up everything, and then I will excuse you so that we can also try to recharge a bit after that.
No, I thought I should thank the journalists and again Africa 21 for this opportunity to talk to the journalists. I think as far as I'm concerned, the journalists can really be able to be a very big ally for us in terms of advancing circularity. First, we think that circularity has been in Africa, but it's now gaining traction in a more different form. And therefore, your role in creating awareness is very critical. And then secondly, we also think that we have just had a discussion on political will. And I think that from my experience for the last very many years that I've been around on Earth, I think many of the things that I've seen taking place have been made as a result of media engagement. And I think that what we can now promise is to see how we can work together as journalists to be able to continue the dialogue on circular economy. And I think that we look forward to opportunity when we have some of these meetings, and we will work with Africa 21 and many of you to be able to be part of those meetings. And you'll be able to become our allies in communicating the messages better. Because I think that's an area of expertise that you have that we don't. You can be able to appeal to the different audiences. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you and respond to some of your questions. I know that some of the answers have not been adequate, but I think that there are resources there all over that you can be able to use.
Thank you so very much, Charles,
Thank you
for your time and for being available for us. So to my colleagues, journalists, Charles' contacts and documents, whatever he presented and whatever else that you may want to interact with is on our webpage. If you want to talk directly to Charles, he's available. So Julian is going to provide the contacts as well. So feel free, feel empowered if you want to talk there.